Your government is lying to you, and the mainstream media is helping them do it. That's super dramatic. She's probably just looking for clicks and views. I understand that sentiment, but I dare you. Go ahead and read the headlines right now. Search breaking news, Iran. From ABC News, Iran live updates, Trump says, quote, no deal with Iran except unconditional surrender. The more conservative Fox News, Trump says U.S., quote, continues to demolish Iranian forces as video shows American firepower. The super liberal news, MS Now, says Iran live updates, Trump demands Iran's, quote, unconditional surrender. The president vowed that the U.S. and its allies, quote, will work tirelessly to bring Iran back from the brink of destruction. And CBS, which we know now resides in Trump's back pocket, says Hegseth says U.S., quote, just getting started in Iran war as conflict intensifies and spreads. That's fine. Those headlines can say whatever they want. But I've taken the time to do the research, and I've grabbed the numbers, and I've looked at maps, and I am prepared to lay out an argument for all of you that will certainly have you thinking differently than these headlines. First, let's start with the size of both Iran and the United States. Behind me is a map of the United States, and the pink outline is how big Iran is. So as you can see, Iran is much smaller than the United States in the sense that you could probably fit at least two of them inside the United States. But let's talk about square miles versus the number of soldiers they have. Iran is the 17th largest country in the world with a square mileage of 636,372 square miles. The United States is the third largest country with a size of 3,796,742 square miles. In terms of the size of their troops, Iran has roughly 600,000 active troops with an additional 350,000 in reserves, coming to a total of 950,000 troops. But we can't just talk about Iran's troops because they have a number of allies in the Middle East. They have Syria, Lebanon, Gaza, Palestine, Yemen, and various militias throughout Iraq. This all forms together to become something known as the Axis of Resistance, which roughly adds up to between 1 and 1.5 million fighters. On the other hand, the United States has an active duty count of between 1.3 and 1.4 million troops. They also have a reserve and National Guard that adds up to about 770,000 additional troops. And if you can do quick math, you will see that there are roughly 2.1 million fighters, 2.1 million troops for the United States. Keeping in mind that we cannot send all 2.1 million abroad over to the Middle East because we have things like boots on the ground in Ecuador and other parts of the world. In terms of population density, we then need to also look at the size of Iran and the size of the United States versus their number of troops. So in Iran, you have an equivalent of about one soldier for every 1 square mile, whereas in the United States, you have one soldier per every 2.9 square miles, almost 3 miles. So their ratio in Iran is much better. Now that we know all of that math, I want to look at our presence in the Middle East. The United States has roughly 19 military sites and or bases throughout the Middle East, and the map behind me shows a number of them. Both the blue and the red are military sites or bases. The red indicates where in this war we have already been struck, and the blue represents where we have not. There are key bases that we need to pay attention to as this war has begun, and these are Qatar, Bahrain, Kuwait, UAE, Jordan, Iraq, and Israel, which is a brand new site for the United States as of 2026. If you're wondering how much money went into the building of all of these bases and sites across the Middle East, since 9/11, taxpayers like you and I, US citizens who work in the United States, have spent roughly $6.4 trillion on wars and military action throughout just this region alone. Now let's look at the strategy Iran is bringing to these military bases abroad, because there is evidence that is not being talked about very much in the mainstream news to prove that we are in fact losing. Yes, We are losing. Let me explain how I know. So let's talk about what has been attacked so far. We know that in Bahrain, we have the US 5th Fleet headquarters, and there we know that 2 satellite communications terminals and several large buildings have either been destroyed or damaged. We don't have the specific reports on that, but at the very least, they are damaged. We also have, and I'm going to butcher some of these names, I'm so sorry, Camp Arifajan in Kuwait, where we have those 6 reported dead military service men and women. I personally believe there are many more than that, but this is what the mainstream media has told us. We also have Ali Al Salam Air Base, which is in Kuwait, and there we had a collapsed rooftop in multiple points caused by strikes from Iran. We have Camp Buring in Kuwait, where a drone exploded in its perimeter. Erbil Air Base in Iraq, where 4 structures were damaged or destroyed, and fires are still burning there. We have Jebel Ali Port in the UAE, where smoke is rising from a building in the US Navy wreck zone. And then we have Al Udeid Air Base in Qatar, where $1.1 billion worth of an ANFS-FPS-132 early warning radar system was struck and damaged. In addition, we have also seen several U.S. embassies sustain strikes from Iran, as well as at least 1 confirmed CIA station. Now, you have to ask yourself, what is the strategy here? What is Iran doing? Because Iran is not at this moment focused on killing American and Israeli troops. They're not. They are taking out specific regions, specific places, specific bases. And what they are doing is they are attacking our communication systems. I had to do a lot more digging, but this is how we know they are trying to make us blind and deaf so we can't know what is going on throughout the Middle East. If we dig a little bit more and search for more facts, here's what you will find. The 5th Fleet headquarters had 2 AN/GSC-52B satellite communications terminals destroyed. These terminals provide high-speed, near real-time connectivity. In Qatar, which is the regional headquarters for Central Command, we saw that a tent surrounded by satellite dishes was destroyed and or damaged. Again, we don't have extensive information on this, but we do know that we had satellite dishes damaged there. Camp Arifjan, again, I'm so sorry, I'm butchering these names, in Kuwait had 3 radomes, protective structures for long-distance communications, either damaged or destroyed. Ali Al Salam in Kuwait had 8 or more buildings near satellite communications infrastructures damaged or destroyed. Again, details are still surfacing about that. In Jordan and the UAE, radar systems for THAAD missile defense batteries worth roughly $500 million have been damaged as well. And on top of this, we are also looking at the possibility of cyber attacks, either at home here in the United States or abroad at some of these military bases. But due to furloughs, because remember, we were getting rid of all the waste, fraud, and abuse in Washington, D.C., our U.S. Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency has reduced its capacity, and now we are facing an increasing numbers of Iranian hackers. So yes, Iran and any other of their allies who are in this fight with them are trying to make the United States and Israeli militaries blind and deaf in the middle of a region that is not home to them. This is guerrilla warfare. So then the question becomes, why are we being hit so much? We shouldn't be if we have defense missiles. And here is the reality. It comes down to a simple math problem. The math problem is a word problem, and it says if Iran produces over 100 missiles per month and the US produces 6 to 7 interceptors, which are designed to take out those missiles that are incoming from Iran, can you win a war? The math answer is no. So then according to that math problem, you have to think as a taxpayer, is this war even worth it from a financial perspective? Because we taxpayers are funding the war with our tax money. And according to that math problem, we can't out-defend Iranian offensive missiles. And if you look at the spend, you'll learn that offensive missiles typically cost a few $1,000s to make, which in the world of war is just a few pennies. Whereas defensive missiles, the ones that we're trying to create, that we can only create 6 to 7 of per month, because they are so complex, they're also incredibly expensive. They cost millions of dollars. So every time we shoot one of those off, we are quite literally burning through millions of dollars. Okay, so it doesn't look like missiles are going to work out in our favor. What about putting troops on the ground? Because Hegseth hasn't ruled out those boots on the ground invasion type of operations. Knowing the number of soldiers per square mile in Iran and knowing their military capabilities in terms of missiles, can we invade them? The answer is no. If we tried to even put 100,000 troops on the ground to invade Iran, it would be a bloodbath. Those people would die, and they would die quickly. And if you want to argue the point that, yeah, we could get them on the ground, my question would be how? Because you're going to get struck by a missile before you can even drop them off. And even if you were able to drop them off, you really think that our troops and Israeli troops stand a chance against a massive military force who has been for 30 years preparing for this very moment, knowing what Netanyahu has wanted to do, and who is very familiar with the landscape of Iran and the environment and the climate and all of the other things? We would be utterly destroyed. It would be a suicide mission. What happens next? What does this mean? I can't tell you 100% for certain because we're dealing with Trump and Netanyahu, both of whom are narcissists who exist in this sort of alternate reality where they are simply power hungry, money hungry, oil hungry, and want to stay out of prison. So they will keep this going as long as physically possible. They don't care how many people die or fall in this war because they don't have that mental capacity or that empathy. It is all about them and playing Battleship, I guess, or a video game with real life human beings and real life money and real life resources. Okay? But what I can tell you for sure what you can expect here on the home front. Number one, it is costing taxpayers in the United States $900 million each and every day that this war wages on. That means we are fronting the bill of billions of dollars per week. That's one thing. As a result, you're going to see different things happen. You can expect a gallon of gas to cost anywhere from $4 to $5. You can expect renewed inflation, which is going to have MAGA supporters, even if it's not externally, internally rethinking their votes, because the Biden excuse will eventually wear out, even for them. We can expect that there may be cyber attacks on water or power grids. That's because CISA, again, is super understaffed, and they're using any efforts they have in that overseas to try and get military forces the information that they need. They're not worried about home, and there aren't enough people to worry about both. We can also expect to see domestic terrorist attacks and overall massive bills across the board. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments. This is not good. The government is lying to you. The mainstream media is allowing it to happen and helping them out.
Okay, I want to talk to you about what is happening with U.S. citizens in the Middle East right now, because it is not getting nearly enough attention. I mean, it is an unmitigated disaster. When the U.S. and Israel launched strikes against Iran last weekend, there were several 100,000 U.S. citizens in the region. Tourists, business travelers, expats, and when Iran started retaliating, hitting airports, embassies, hotels, those Americans picked up the phone and called their government for help. You've probably seen the video of what the State Department's hotline told them. Quote, "Please do not rely on the U.S. government for assisted departure or evacuation at this time." That was the recorded message from the United States government to its own citizens in a war zone, in a war that the U.S. started. Americans from across the region were told to evacuate even though all the airports were closed, told to contact embassies that couldn't answer the phones, told to find commercial flights that didn't exist because the airspace was shut down because we were at war. Now, some foreign governments did step in to house and feed stranded Americans while our government figured out what to do. The UAE, Jordan, Saudi Arabia had to take care of our people while our government was clueless. And when reporters asked Secretary of State Rubio whether there was an evacuation plan in place before the strikes, his answer was, well, that's the plan we're trying to carry out. In other words, no, we had no plan. When they asked Trump why Americans weren't warned, he said it all happened too quickly. Too quickly. That's their explanation. The people who started the war. Here's what didn't happen quickly. The gutting of the State Department. That was deliberate and methodical. The administration fired thousands of experienced diplomats. They left ambassador posts in multiple affected countries Empty. They eliminated the Arabic and Farsi speakers, the exact people you need in a Middle East crisis. This week, the American Foreign Service Association said the crisis exposes exactly the gaps they've been warning about for months. This was zero strategy and zero planning. The State Department was simultaneously telling Americans to leave while refusing to actually help them do it. Nearly 20,000 Americans have now made it out, but largely on their own or with help from foreign governments, not ours, and there are still thousands there. This is a reminder you can gut agencies, you can fire the experts, you can leave the ambassador posts empty like the Trump administration has done, and then when the war you started goes sideways, you will find yourself having to say to your own citizens, your government can't help you, sorry. And that is what it looks like when the people running your government care more about starting wars than they do about protecting their own citizens. Just imagine what happens when it's time to send in ground troops.
All right, in this second week of this war between United States and Israel against Iran, what's trending? What is trending is that United States President Donald Trump is demanding unconditional surrender from Iran. He didn't stop there. He said that there will be no deal unless Iran surrenders to the United States. He's also demanding that Iran will be given a new supreme leader other than the son of Ali Ayatollah Khamenei. These two conditions will come before United States President Donald Trump will have a deal with Iranian people. Is this achievable? You can help me answer that. In response to this, the Iranian head of parliament, that is the Iranian speaker of the parliament, Mohammed, have responded to Donald Trump, telling him, and I quote, Iran is not part of your espionage gang. This man went ahead and said, and I quote, Donald Trump does not understand the level of calamity he has brought upon himself and upon the United States military. The fate of the people of Iran cannot be determined by the Epstein gang, but can only be determined by the great people of Iran. This is the response of the Speaker of the Iranian Parliament, Mohammed. So guys, so far, do you think that what Donald Trump is bringing on the table so far is achievable? Just in all sincerity, does it look like what can be achieved? Because looking at what is happening on both sides in this war, both sides are independently firing against each other. Air bombardments. There is no boot on ground yet from the United States or from Israel against Iran. And one party, I'm talking about the United States, is now demanding for an unconditional surrender to a country that has been bombarding your assets all around the Middle East, to a country that has been so resilient in responding harshly to all your airstrikes in their territory. The same country you are telling to come and surrender unconditionally. Not just surrender, but unconditionally. There's no deal on the table. Now, let's look at it this way. Before Donald Trump came up with this statement of Iran surrendering unconditionally, Donald Trump was going through the back, through Italy and through Turkey, to bring Iran back to the negotiation table. Who is the Iranian Minister of Foreign Affairs? I'm talking about Abbas Arashi, who responded as at then, saying that there will be no more negotiation between the United States and Iran. That the time they were open for negotiation, that United States abused it by going through the back to attack them, which was the same thing they did during the 12 days war. United States is already used to attacking Iran during the time of negotiation. This time, they are coming for unconditional surrender. Looking at it from all ramifications, do you think that unconditional surrender can even happen in this war? The same war that you don't even have anyone on ground? Or is it the Kurdish tribe you have in Iran, who you have armed to fight against the Iranian regime that you are depending upon to execute whatever you're looking at in Iran? At least before one party in a war seek for unconditional surrender, you must have crippled your opposition in all ramifications. You must have had the capacity to lay a blockade on them from getting access to weapons, getting access to food to feed their soldiers and their civilians. A whole lot of advantage you must have on your side before you demand for anything that looks like unconditional surrender. But in this case, Iran is still very much active in terms of their defensive capability. And Trump is talking about unconditional surrender. Let me tell you something. Donald Trump have already seen what is going on. And there is a card he's trying to play so far. As this whole thing is going, time shall come. Donald Trump will come out and tell the people of Israel Bibi precisely, that so far he has been able to take out the supreme leader of Iran, which he will tag as one of his major goals, because in a war you must have a goal. Then secondly, that he has been able to sink Iranian naval assets, their warships. That so far that this is a very big win and achievement for the United States so far against Iran. Therefore, that is high time United States will withdraw their assets from the Arabian Sea. At that moment, he will be expecting the people of Israel, I'm talking about Benjamin Netanyahu, to continue the war, since him as the father had been able to remove the supreme leader of Iran from the picture, and also have been able to sink so many of the Iranian ships. Therefore, that Bibi should continue his war. That is when this war will get more interesting, because it will then appear like when you leave Iran and Israel in a boxing ring without any kind of help, then you watching this video will tell me who will do with who mercilessly.